reaction to the concert of Roman theatre. So what do you do?
To survive,
Mm-hmm.
I do the gypsy gymnastic.
Show me,
No, it's
please.
an inside secret. Seriously. Then everybody.
Crazy what you do on the stage.
And what about off stage? I mean, the fatigue that you get on tour is undescribable. I can't describe you the exhaust and fucking feebleness of condition that you can get to. It's really like an army. It's like in a war on the front line, and you start feeling it after 6-7 shows, and you still have about 20 to go. It's really about the survival techniques. Because when you write all this music, you're so inspired, and every song is a product of catharsis. But then you have 15, 16 of them to perform during one show. All these products of catharsis. And that lets you know, it wears you out immensely. You have 15, 16 is the length of the set. It's about an hour and 45 minutes of catharsis products that are like, physically it's like running a marathon. And afterwards, of course, you slip into after party mode. And some say, well, don't after party, go to a hotel and get your rest. But the thing is that, first of all, it's against the nature. Secondly, even if you do that, if you go and try to get the rest, you don't get the so-called or so felt closure of the evening. And you feel, amazingly enough, you feel just as tired in the morning as if you would stay up till 5:30, 6 and go fucking nuts with the locals. It's really true. I really actually committed myself to doing one tour with no after partying. It was a short tour, only 2 weeks. But I was brutally exhausted. And I think I was exhausted from not having after parties and not having that closure of the evening, receiving the gifts from the locals part of the evening. It fucking sucks. So I ain't doing that again. And I'm getting pretty ready to receive some gifts from the locals tonight here in Chita, in what kind of Siberia is this? East Siberia. East-South Siberia. Yeah. Traidam daram daraidam daram daraidam daram daraidam da.
And that's after a jet lag.
Yeah, I felt it during the concert actually. Suddenly I was like, but it only takes 20 minutes to recharge, really, if you know the method, the techniques.
So show me the method.
No.
It's a gypsy secret.
It's a gypsy secret. No. No, you don't need it. You don't tour like this.
Yeah,
Nobody needs it. Only Gogol Bordello needs it, and maybe I don't know who else. Maybe Iggy Pop needs it. Well, he doesn't need it anymore.
Yeah, but
Now
most people, when they see you on stage, they're curious, like, where does he get the energy from? You have an immense amount of energy.
That's true. It's a problem. But it's not endless. It's endless. But,
it seems like it to me, anyway.
well,
I mean, you're the
I
first
know,
one
you're
to
a
get
girl,
up.
that's how it's supposed to seem to you.
You're the first one to get up, the last one to go to bed. And you don't stop for a second during the day.
Actually, there is one guy who gets up earlier than me and goes to bed later than me.
Who is that?
His name is Yuri Levashev. He plays accordion in Gogol Bordello. Who was born not so far away from him. Who's the thing is, the guy has no methods. I'm partly a force of nature and partly a product of a discipline of survival. Yuri has no discipline. He has sausage and vodka for breakfast. So
Maybe it's something in the Siberian
he
air.
quit smoking lately, but well, for sure, it's genetics. It's been done by his ancestors for so long, like the brutality of it.
Maybe we can find something from the shamans tomorrow if we go to see them, which I would like.
Yes.
The secret of.
You're not gonna find anything about that among shamans, but we can install a special aura blessing for you and our crew
Our film.
and our film. I think that's a good idea.
I'd like to meet him when I get to New York.
You want
He was
to
the
meet
one
him?
who danced with me most in Denver. He went crazy.
You want to meet him?
Yeah.
But you will, as he would say. Start to miss these guys. It's time to rock the fucking tour van again.
Do you always look forward to
Tour?
touring? Yeah?
Yeah. I mastered my way on the road. It's despite exhaustion and everything, I really feel like something opens up on my back and I feel like pretty winged, you know? Like a winged Avenger. But the problem is kicking around the same block in the city, you know? That's I'm pretty happy with the person that I am on tour. But on the same block I have too much to burn, I guess.
What do you mean? What kind of a person do you become when you're in the same place? What kind of a person do you become?
Eventually, from what I learned about what it does to me, but it kind of starts causing me some kind of mental illness. Like I don't know, some kind of I mean, definitely some kind of staggeredness.
That's what most people.
I start realizing that I'm not getting utilized. You know, I start feeling dysfunctional, and I know for sure that I start realizing that that's not where I belong, very rapidly, and then it leads. I mean, I can get a lot of work done still, and for a while, but if it's longer than several months, one of the things that is completely unnecessary, and I think is just simply product of mind work, is like something like hypochondria, things like that. Just starts like it's just work of the way mind works, anything that you put in there, it starts processing it in a similar way. So if you have buck wild imagination, sooner or later some kind of hypochondriac thing will fall in there, and then for 2 weeks I will suffer from it. And then it wins out and goes away until next 6 months or something like that. But on the road, never.
You don't have time to think.
No, I think all the time on the road, but it's a different thought processing. It's engagement, It's engagement and process of new information. If I live on the same block for a while, I make up for it by buying hundreds of CDs and corresponding with people and reading and being with my friends, which I'm very happy about. But I think some kind of starvation for new information is always there, and it's some kind of a hyperactivity of mind. Maybe I can take pills for it.
As a child,
But I will. But why shall I if I fully enjoy everything else? As long as it's not on the same block for too fucking long. Everything else is. That's why I say that I mastered my way on the road, because I love on the road. I love. That's considered to be done. And I think you can learn that it's a whole breed of people. I mean, I know that Bob Dylan, and he basically lives on a bus. He basically lives on the road, and it's for when melancholy can strike. It can only strike if you're really committed to unmoving subjects.
Were you hyperactive when you were a child?
What's that?
Were you hyperactive when you were a child? Did you have discipline problems and...
Yes. Once they even want to call ambulance because they thought that I'm having some kind of a hysteria attack, which I kind of did, but I was just really kind of having a lot of fun.
What was that about?
I don't know, I just thought that it was kind of a good idea to... I had some kind of a natural burn, and I took all the old newspapers that were in the house, which had a stack of old newspapers, and I tore them all up completely during the loud music. And it was like newspapers, crumpled, torn newspapers up to the, like above, up to your chest, and my grandmother, she wanted to call ambulance because she thought there was something really wrong with me. But in my personal history, I think it was like my first art event.
Performance?
Yeah.
What music was it that made you tear up all the
Sex Pistols. That band for a long time made me feel like that, and even now it's so burned in the back of my mind. Like every song of Nevermind the Bollocks, here is the Sex Pistols. It's an incredible album. I don't think actually that any other album ever made me feel like this. I mean, maybe the Stooges' Funhouse also made me feel like that. But I heard it later than Sex Pistols, later on, and then I mean, it's definitely above in a shamanistic level, and it's the origin, and everybody knows that that's way more pioneering than Sex Pistols. But in my progression, I heard Sex Pistols first, and the intensity of that just kicked me in the fucking dick. Like there was no comparison to anything else. I was like, forget the metal and forget all this Hütz folk. And later on, it was just a part of the mix. Yeah, but my grandmother, when she always was home, and because she was just tailoring, sewing up dresses for girls and for women around in the neighborhood, and she was actually quite known underground tailor because you obviously could not run your own business in the Soviet Union. So it was illegal, but nobody would put you to jail for that. It was just something you did and tried to be careful about. So we always had houses full of one, two at a time girls or women who were just sitting around in their 90s and half naked women. And because my grandmother often let me skip school secretly from my parents, that was kind of a big part of my childhood magic. I could stay home surrounded by naked chicks, do my own thing, and tear up lots of newspapers listening to Sex Pistols.
Was that the gypsy grandmother of yours?
Yeah.
The one who told you can always count on people wanting to get fucked?
That's basically kind of not the only her philosophy. Even it was rephrased. Even my dad told me that. I mean, he was just like, he said it in different words, but he's like, you can always count on people wanting to have a good time. Get fucked up. My grandmother said that he did it even during the war, because she went to war, and I took it to heart. She said, now and in the wartime and any time, you can always count on people wanting to get fucked up, get drunk, and party. And I was like looking at the bullet wound in her arm. As a child, I could not take it seriously. And
How did she get the bullet?
she was on the front line in war, as most of the people of that age from Soviet Union. She was also the first one to put a gypsy seed in my mind, because she would just say things that I didn't think meant anything really until I was a little bit older, but she was always said, it's all not so simple, like the way you are and the things you do and the way dad is and the way your uncle is, it's all not so simple, there's all, you just don't know. That is all explanation. And she told me a couple strange stories about gypsies that I didn't understand why she was telling them to me. For example, one about that in their village, a family wanted to have babies, and they could never have a baby. Had a problem with that, and they adopted a kid from an orphanage, and the kid grew up pretty happy with them, actually. But when he was about 10 or so years old, there was a caravan was passing through their village. It was right after, it was maybe like, I don't know, 1950s. And he saw it, and he just split with them. You know? And just left, just ran away when the gypsies was passing by. And you know, as a true story, it makes you think like about something. And even though artistically, like, I grew up kind of believing, like, liberating myself from many things that were tormenting me during growing up. But so kind of imagination and free will and a lust for freedom was the most driving forces for me. And I always felt onward towards artists who reached that imagination as basically your destiny, you know. And I went with this whole gypsy imagination. It was put in my mind by my grandmother, some of my experiences. And I kind of felt like I'm going with that because that's what I imagine as an artist, and that's my freedom. But when I was already 30, 31, I looked back and I basically realized that everything I do is kind of pretty typical and predetermined in a ways that a lot of Roma people do, which kind of put me in a dilemmatic frame of mind. Was there ever even any freedom of imagination for me? Or was I always basically preconceived to be like that already? So that kind of sends to the fucking shitter the whole artistic imagination idea. Which maybe at the end it totally doesn't matter because I burned through it through my teenage years and 20s. Maybe it's like an engines for a rocket. You have a couple of them. One burns out, and so fuck it, next one kicks in. It worked for me back then, anyhow. Now the more I see these people, and the more I connect, the more everything makes sense to me. The more, usually when people who are not accustomed to gypsies, which is, I wasn't accustomed to them when I was growing up, but 99% of people kind of goes, wow. And I always had this opposite reaction, like, towards. So now the more I track things down for me, the more it all completely falls into place. Huh?
We were talking about this, that everybody that goes on tour with you kind of is, and me, myself included,
One more.
is kind of shaken up by, to think about their own lives. Like, fuck, am I doing something wrong?
Well, maybe that's the best thing I can offer to, in general. Maybe it's not even my music, and maybe it's not even my dancing. Maybe that's the best thing I can offer, really. And I suspect so. And everything else is just a part of it. But if that can throw people, turn people towards their own breakout out of all this garbage that surrounds us, that's be it, Be my fucking guest. And I'll be there doing that until I fucking crash away.
Very soon.
Yeah, it's partly, yeah. But a lot of people reach bottom very soon.
But
And then they
crawl
just
up.
and then they just stay depressed,
I mean, what made you have a nervous breakdown?
It was circumstantial. I think it was, immigration was traumatic because of losing all your social setting and lots of road and too young of age to pursue it, and arriving somewhere where you don't have anything and basically have nothing, no girls, no nothing, no language.
No girls? You? Back then?
Not back then. It started out very good up until I left, and then my psyche just got slashed in half or something like that happened. And as second part is that there was a lot of light deprivation in Vermont, where I was working in a music store that was located in the basement, and I was usually working from 11 in the morning until 7 in the evening. So whenever I would go to work, it was basically see 10 minutes of sunlight because it was still dark at 10 and 10:30. And then I would go from work, it was already dark. And I think at one point that light deprivation and with the whole trauma of the whole thing kind of kicked in into this form of some kind of psychotic condition that I didn't know what to do with, because I was worried that if I show, before we entered America, they checked us for everything, and including the, so if I just go to the hospital and now manifest, that I'm half out of it, my fear was that they're gonna deport me or something like that. So I couldn't do anything about it. That I couldn't really talk to anybody, and I had to kind of burn through with that without knowing how long it's gonna last. So that kind of sucked for a long time, basically. And then that was a kind of a moment where I had no help, and I told something to my mom about it a couple times, but she didn't want to hear it, because I think she was just, not because she didn't care, but she just was in denial of that something can be really wrong with me. And because I could act okay, but I was definitely totally freaked out and paranoid and nauseous, and had tear attacks all the time, and just crying for hours. But eventually I noticed that some things that if I was forced during that time, actually forced to take a driving test, and that put me under the pressure of, I was like, I really have, I really had to do it. It just was scheduled by my parents, and I really kind of had to sit down and learn all this stuff and figure it out. And I learned that while doing something very focused or trying to focus very hard, that I felt semi better. And later on, from reading, some books, I found that that's a lot of times the cure from a lot of mental illness, actually. And it's a enforced organization of mind, enforced focus. And later on, I wish I'd known that then, but thanks God that I was forced into focusing on it, because then I started undertaking more tasks, just forcing myself into learning English more and doing other things that just occupied my mind completely. And I started getting better. And then after a while of that, I always liked Carl Jung. And once, come on, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, two most.
Oh, Jung, okay,
yes.
yeah.
And once I was reading Carl Jung already after that, and he had this quote that said, a nervous breakdown is a person's golden chance to self-discovery. And I was like, yes! I was like, I actually got a lot out of it at the end. And a lot of my social dysfunctioning peeled away after that. Partly because I just didn't fucking care anymore, really, about what, what people think. And partly because of that confidence from Carl Jung, who I always favored over this dumb motherfucker named Sigmund Freud.
How come you did not care any longer for the response of what people think about you? How can you reach that stage when you don't give a fuck what everybody thinks?
I don't know. That's just kind of how it felt. When you're young and punk rock, by wearing some total garbage, you're trying to pretend that you don't care what they think. But at the same time, you're totally feeling nauseous and about to throw up every fucking second. But that was actually not caring what people think, eventually. Pretty liberating. What a fucking clown, huh? Let's go. Party time.
Go against the light. That would be cool, like a silhouette.